My wish for everyone, whether you're spiritual, inclined to wake up, interested in Buddhism, Advaita, Christian mysticism, or you're an atheist, a materialist, doesn't really matter. Regardless of how you walk through life, what your values are, there's one possibility for you that if I had my wish for humanity, for human individuals, for you, it would be to realize equanimity. First, I want to say what equanimity isn't. Equanimity is not a flow state. Equanimity doesn't mean being well-adjusted. Equanimity doesn't mean feeling happy all the time. It doesn't exclude those experiences, but those are all experiences or states. Equanimity is a realization. It's something that, when it's realized or clarified, it's where you come in contact with, let's say, reality or living truth in such a way that you realize equanimity is an aspect of living truth, of the turning wheel of the Dharma. There's no particular phrase that works here, but it's not an experience, and it's not an insight specifically. It's where you finally come in contact with a place that is so settled, so simple and obvious, so adaptable, that it couldn't be of the human dimension. Meaning, a lot of what we take ourselves to be as a human, not what we really are, but what we take ourselves to be, what we react out of, the view through which we see the world, is made up of this kind of oppositional energy. We have an oppositional energy with our own experience, with our own thoughts, our own emotions. That's the internal environment. And we externalize this internal environment such that we have a problem with, or struggle against, or reaction to external circumstances, other people, largely other people. People we like, people we don't like, people we're close to, people we've never met. But also situations. We feel like that situation didn't go like it should have. This isn't going like it should be going. That person treated me in a way they should not have treated me. If you see how much struggle results from this type of not just thinking, but processing, experiencing, then you can start to perceive how much energy gets put into this, how much distraction is involved in this. So simply stated, equanimity is when we break the spell of reactivity, when we break the spell of struggle, when we break the spell of believing in a very fundamental way, behaviorally, that we need to have an oppositional, pushing, pulling type of relationship with everything, essentially. Now, we may not feel like we're doing it all the time. We may be doing it very subtly at times, and other times we're doing it in a very gross way, very large scale or overt way. So we don't notice that there's the tendency there most or all of the time. It's so common, it's so constantly our companion, we don't realize that it's not necessary. It's not a part of who we really are, or it's not a part of what's what. It's extra, it's added on. And it requires effort, but it doesn't require conscious effort. So it becomes automatic. or essentially automatic, like a habit. So why would I hope or wish that anyone who wants to can realize equanimity? Well, it makes things so simple. And it makes things enjoyable, but not in a sort of polarized way. It's not the joy or happiness or excitement that opposes an opposite. It's just a simple enjoyment of being alive, but it's profound. It's profound in its subtlety. You've tasted it before. I'm pretty convinced everyone has. Well, I know everyone has at some time in their life, but you may have been so young you don't remember. But equanimity is not something that is foreign to you. It's just covered up by a layer of reactivity. What does reactivity look like? Looks like a lot of things. Sometimes it just looks like overt reaction. The angry person, the person who's always at odds with those around them, in arguments all the time, fights even. There are, of course, overt forms of reactivity, but often they're much more subtle. We may just get in debates frequently, constantly feeling like we have to defend our position, whether it's political, spiritual, whatever. We can overlook a lot of reactivity when it's something that feels close to us. Even spirituality. It can look like passive aggressiveness. It can look like manipulation of other people. It can look like inauthenticity. So often it's not overtly reactive, it's sort of latent reactivity or smoldering reactivity. But if you make a study of tracking it down, you can find it. And the beauty of this is you don't have to look outside yourself at all. Just look how you're reacting to things outside yourself and how you're reacting to things inside yourself. And just be willing to see it, recognize it, and feel it. When you first start to look into this, you will almost certainly be surprised how much is actually there. Even if you've done a lot of emotion work, even if you've done a lot of therapy, even if you've done years and years and years of meditation, even if you're a spiritual teacher, you might be surprised how much is still there when you overtly look for it, when you knowingly welcome the discomfort that's causing you to react, to take an oppositional stance toward anything at all, anything. Now, I understand the mind will often balk at this. There are injustices in the world. There are things we need to fight against. There are things we need to take a stand against. All of those are true, but none of them actually require reactivity. You can placidly and with simplicity and innocence and a deep and profound trust in this moment, in your own emotions, in your breath, in the senses, act to correct injustices. But often that's not what we're actually doing. We're imagining. We're creating internal mental reactivity to argue. And what are we arguing against? We're arguing against the possibility that we can actually enjoy true, ongoing peace. In one sense, we're our own worst enemy. That's why this all comes down to identity. Who are you? If you're pushing against yourself, who's pushing? What's the nature of the self that's being pushed against? What's the medium in which the pushing is occurring? What are you reacting to in the first place? Is it a thought, a belief, a memory? What if you don't react? What if you look for the reaction mechanism and don't find anything at all? Now what? What will you do? Who will you be? Well, at first, it won't be that simple. You might not find a reaction mechanism. But if you just wait long enough, you'll feel the struggle, the reactivity, the discord come to the surface again and again and again. So this is work that can take some time. But the beauty of it is you don't really have to do anything. It's more a not doing. It's more based on awareness. Be aware. Aware of what's happening and what's not actually happening. And a willingness to feel uncomfortable. It's inherently uncomfortable to be identified with reactivity and feel restlessness simultaneously. The restlessness is what underlies all of this. And it's not a problem. But we have Velcroed reactivity to restlessness without realizing it. We've made a lot of assumptions about the need and value of reaction, struggle, opposition, all of it. Look and see if those assumptions are true. The only place you can really look is in that discomfort. The discomfort of restlessness without reacting. If you can learn to get reasonably comfortable there, it'll never be really comfortable, but if you can learn to stay there, be willing to just be there, that's 90% of the work when it comes to this. And patience. This isn't on your timeline. Take some time. Could take several months, could take a handful of years. But so what? What else are you doing? Take the time to do it. Take the time to look into this. It's well worth it. To completely and thoroughly enjoy your internal environment. Or let's just say the space of presence. Without having to do anything about anything. Which means you don't have to not do anything. You don't have to regroup. It's not a lazy state. You don't have to resist movement and you don't have to resist stillness. Wouldn't that be a relief? What moves, moves, and what stays still, stays still. Don't become obsessed with effort. Effort hides a lot of reactivity. Don't become obsessed with trying to still the mind and still everything, because that hides a lot of latent reactivity. You got to walk the razor's edge. And you find the razor's edge by tracing down the signature of restlessness. It's a very, very good and potent energetic teacher, but it's the last thing you're going to look for until you really make a point of it. You'll avoid it without even realizing it. You'll avoid it through distraction, spiritual practices, mundane habits, whatever. And none of those things, habits, spiritual practices, activities of various kinds, moving, sitting still, none of those things are inherently reactive. That's the bizarre thing about this. But until you really, really look for this and track it down, it often will not subside on its own, even after awakening. So, that's my wish for anyone and everyone who wants to take up this challenge.